G'day, folks. Today I'm going to go through my November 2023 crypto power rankings. So, for the purposes of today's video, I will go through my top 5 cryptocurrencies to be buying this month. So, for those that want to jump ahead, I'll leave a timestamp in the description if you want to get straight into my top 5. But first, I will go through some disclaimers. So, naturally, this isn't financial advice. I'm not a financial advisor, so do be mindful of that. But for those that are broadly interested in my interest in crypto, essentially what I've been looking at and why I'm going to be investing really everything I've got for the next year in crypto, and maybe a year and a bit even, is that essentially there's a 4-year crypto cycle for those that have been following crypto. And we're heading towards the Bitcoin halvening. And typically after that point, you get a great acceleration in crypto prices. And even in the lead up to, you sometimes do get some valuation increases as well. So essentially now, at least I can only speak for me personally, is a time that I'm accumulating and accumulating aggressively. And these are some of the coins that I believe will be among the highest performers in this upcoming bull market. So hopefully you get something from this video. And all the cryptocurrencies that I'll be discussing, it's really important to have an idea about, well, what's a good price to be buying? When do you want to exit, or at what price do you wish to exit? You really do need to have those understandings. And you also need to understand what's the purpose behind each cryptocurrency. So some might be designed where maybe it makes your passive income. Some might be designed to grow in value over time. They've all got very different purposes, and therefore it's really important to understand the purpose and whether it also fits in with your financial objectives. So, with all that out the way, let's get stuck in. So starting out with number 5 in my power rankings, and I'll work my way to number 1, which will be my highest rated cryptocurrency. But starting at 5, I'm starting with TitanX. So for those that watched my previous video, it was on TitanX. And for those that happen to have purchased TitanX or decided to mine TitanX at that time, well, you're all thoroughly in the green, it's fair to say. So for me personally, and how my TitanX position has gone, at least the way things are projecting at the end of the respective mining and staking periods, it's, if at least the prices of TitanX hold, which is far from guaranteed, it looks like I would be up at least today around 50x. So needless to say, that would be a phenomenal outcome. But the reason that I actually got into TitanX wasn't for the growth prospects at all. That wasn't my concern at all. I really went in with the idea of looking at TitanX as a potential cash flow foundation, whereby I would be accumulating Ethereum. So essentially, for those who stake their TitanX, essentially you'll be receiving, it's essentially a bit like a dividend of Ethereum on set payout days. So you've got payouts, you've got every 8 days, you've got every 28 days, and you've got various intervals as well, which you can find on their website. So I'll leave a link in the description below for those that are interested to find out a bit more about it. But essentially, from a staking perspective, that which I've staked, I'm set by the end of day 28 to have made in excess of 100% in terms of cash flow terms in Ethereum, which is phenomenal. So let's say I put in 0.1 ETH. Well, my payout would be in excess of 0.1 ETH in that first month. And for me, having locked it up for the maximum period of, I think it's around 10 years, I'm going to be receiving more and more payments in Ethereum. So essentially what I've done is I've formed a bit of a cash flow foundation where I'm going to continue into, over that 10-year period to receive Ethereum payouts. And for me, that's going to be helpful, mostly just for gas fee purposes. But also it means that I do have the opportunity, if I so desire, maybe at the top of the bull market, to sell down some of that Ethereum for a profit as well. So that's some of my thought process. But with the value of TitanX dramatically increasing since I made my previous video, and if you want to know a bit more about TitanX, you can view that as well for a bit more. But essentially, I'm looking at it as if you were to buy TitanX off the market and stake it, the return on investment, and in terms of particularly cash flow terms, isn't all that great. Where it was projecting for me with my various stakes that I've put down, essentially the return would be well over 200% on all those returns, whereas now you're not even sort of getting your 100% return. It's probably somewhere around the 20% mark or 30% mark, depending on where the prices are today. So given that, if I was to increase my position in Titan X, which I'm strongly considering adding to, the way I will be doing that is through mining. And the return on mining, if you look through the website, is still very substantial. And that means that essentially by the end of that mining period, I'd either have the option to either sell down the Titan X that I've received, or the other option is I can choose to stake it. And for me personally, I'm most likely going to stake it, assuming the return on investment is likely to be, in cash flow terms, quite good. So yeah, they're the things I'll be thinking about there with Titan X. But to move on to number 4. So this is a crypto that is, to me, gravely underpriced, and it's just a case of it launched at the very wrong time, launching at the really around the peak of the bull market. So it's probably down around 98, 99% from peak. But Internet Computer is my number 4 crypto. And the reason I've got Internet Computer in that position is I think it's actually got the scope in the very long term to actually be the number 1 project in crypto. So in terms of technology, there's nothing that's comparable at all. You're going to have interoperability with both Bitcoin and Ethereum coming up, so that's something to look forward to. And essentially, it's actually got the scope to be a competitor to Amazon Web Services. So that's the extent to the upside. And it's also a technology that's going to render a lot of cryptocurrencies mostly, I guess, unnecessary. So you've got people in, let's say, the Chainlink community believing that they will render Polkadot sort of useless. But I could actually say similar of Internet Computer, where with Internet Computer, as the adoption grows, it will mean that the likes of even, say, a Chainlink won't be as necessary in the future. And it will have a much sort of less, I guess, useful application, where just Internet Computer will really do everything. So definitely do some more research into all the projects I do today, Internet Computer included. But with how far it's down from its peak price, it's something that I've been certainly buying over the last year, and I intend to continue to expand my position in over the coming months. So, and for me, if I'm talking about at what level I like it as a buy, well, anything under $3 US for me, at least personally, this is speaking for me. You need to find your own price points if you're interested at home. But for me, at $3 US, it's a screaming buy. And anything under $5, it's worth DCAing into. And I think from there, really, the upside is substantial. So that's for me personally. Moving down the list to number 3 in my rankings. So I'm a big believer in all the Richard Hart coins, and I've got Hex as my number 3 in my power rankings. And when I'm talking Hex, I'm talking about Hex on Pulse Chain. I'm talking about Hex on Ethereum. You've also got the various Maximus projects, my favorites of which are the full-blown sort of Maximus version, and you've also got Deci. I like those two personally because they're the longest versions. So that, for me, really appeals, where you've got the longest periods of staking. And additionally as well, you don't have the gas fees associated with it, where by buying in, essentially, you're really, I guess, getting that increased Hex value over time, and you don't have to pay those start stake and end stake fees. So that really appeals to me with those products. So really what I'd be looking at there is, if I'm looking at from a T-share value perspective, do some research into T-shares if you're not too familiar with Hex. But essentially, for me personally, when I'm buying, that's how I determine, well, at this point in time, if I want to increase my position, do I buy Hex? Do I buy Maximus? Do I buy some Deci? But you also do have shorter staking versions of Maximus, which are worth looking into, so you can consider those as well. But for me, I'm all about sort of delaying gratification. So for me, in buying something like Internet Computer, well, I like doing the maximum length stakes. I'm sure having some liquid is fine, and I'll consider having some liquid so that I can sell it at the top of the bull market. But essentially, I really care about more so that very long-term position. And I've got the same view with Hex, where I'm a max length staker. And yeah, it's the same sort of idea with Maximus and Deci. And look, with Maximus and Deci as well, I would have the ability to, at the peak, still sell it, because it is actually a crypto that, despite being staked, you still do have that ability to sell down. So that's something. And also within the third ranking, which still comes under the Hex heading, you've got the Hex derivatives. So you've got Hedron, and you've also got Icosa. So they're two others to look at, and they're two that I also plan to add to my positions to potentially, depending on where I see the valuations at and the upside compared to the likes of Hex and the various Maximus coins. So that's all under the broad heading of Hex. But yeah, my tip is, if you want to be buying, think about how long you want to be staking for, if you want to stake at all, and think about sort of how liquid you want it to be and when you want to be selling. And also think about as well the price points and the relative value. They're, for me, the important things to help decide which one to go into. But again, with Hex, it's down probably something around 98% from peak. So given that, and given I even liked the valuation at the peak, well, naturally, I'm pretty excited about the future for Hex, because ultimately it is a growing community. You've still got such a huge community on social media that is still so vocal in advocating for Hex and the whole sort of broader Hex ecosystem and all the other cryptos related to Hex. So yeah, given that, I think really in the when we get to the bull market phase, it does have the scope to really roar up quite substantially in a hurry. So that's something to look out for. But I think it will be more so a case of, once the Richard Hart case concludes, that's when, yeah, I think things will start to take shape. And I think Richard Hart will beat the SEC personally. That's my prediction anyway. But yeah, just think of it as me as a talking head on the internet. Maybe I'm right, maybe I'm wrong. Don't take that as any sort of advice. That's just what I think. I don't think there's really any case for the SEC there in wanting to sort of shut down Richard. But on to my number 2 coin, and again, I'm going to stick to the Richard Hart ecosystem, and I'm going to say PulseX. With PulseX, you've got the buy and burn, which is really, I guess, the volumes on PulseX increase. I think that the value will go up substantially. So for me, look, I'm mostly a cash flow investor, but with that said, I think PulseX will be one of the substantial growers. Having really launched during the bear market, and really having that scope, being so underpriced as we speak, to really substantially grow from its current valuation. So for me, I'm looking at it as one of my growth coins. And at number 1, I've got the same sort of view towards Pulse Chain. So Pulse Chain is my number 1. And again, it's a case of, it's just so underpriced for what it is, for how much volume there is, how much adoption there is on Pulse Chain, how many validators there are. Whatever metrics you look at, Pulse Chain is grossly undervalued, and in some respects it's a superior fork of Ethereum, where you've got obviously the lower transaction fees, that yeah, just everything runs so smoothly on there. It's all quick, it's all good, it's all clean, it's all reliable. So and as we get a few more on-ramps and a bit more ease of getting onto Pulse Chain, I think that'll really see things explode, or even just the speculation around those things coming in the future. I think they will lead to really explosive price growth with Pulse Chain. So needless to say, with all those 5 cryptos, I've got strong positions in all of them, but I'm really looking to add to each of those positions over the coming months. What I will say is that with my 5th one in Titan-X, that's the one where I feel it's the most time sensitive. And if you really want to get in to stake, at least, you really want to look at, well, what's the return going to be? And you really want to get in before that day 28 payout, because that's when you're going to be getting a big payout in Ethereum terms. So that's something to be mindful of. But essentially, the earlier you get in with Titan-X, particularly if you're going to mine, but same story with staking, ultimately the better you'll do in the long run, because with the Titan-X mining, it costs more with every passing day to be a miner. So the earlier you get in, the better. But beyond that, it's really more over the course of the next year and deeper into the next year, being pretty happy with my Titan-X position. It's really those Richard Hart coins and then ICP that I'll really be trying to increase my position in. So, and with Titan-X obviously being that Ethereum cash flow foundation, well, I don't need to buy any Ethereum. I think Ethereum will no doubt increase in value, and I actually believe it will increase by more than Bitcoin will from at least where we currently stand to the peak of the cycle. But yeah, in sort of having that cash flow foundation, well, it just means I don't have to buy any Ethereum, which is a huge bonus. And it means that at any time, or any of that cash flow in Ethereum terms I've got, well, I can always bridge across to Pulse Chain and I can buy any assets on there. Or if I want to buy, say, any Hex-related assets or whatever else on Ethereum, maybe I want to mine a bit more Titan X. Well, it gives me that sort of flexibility. So that's what I like about having that sort of cash flow foundation. But yeah, with any of the cryptos I've spoken about today, make sure if any of them have sounded interesting to you at all, research them further, really understand them inside out before putting any funds into it. And for me, how I can justify being so aggressive with crypto as to be able to say every dollar I earn over the next year, I'm putting into crypto. Well, the reason I can do that is because in fiat, I've already got a cash flow foundation, which more than covers all my lifestyle expenses. Including whether it's rent, whether it's food, absolutely everything, all the bills, covers all of that. So with that position in mind, cryptocurrency investing fits my risk profile. But for those of you at home where, look, you don't have that sort of option really, and you really have to think about, well, is crypto investing right for me? And if so, well, how much am I going to put into it? For a lot of people, it's probably wise to be a bit more conservative than I am. But look, in my position, I have no need for that sort of conservatism, given I've got that cash flow foundation, which is more than sufficient for me to go sort of full bore and try and make the most of what I'm at least hoping will be a pretty raging bull market over the next sort of year and a half, roughly. So... but yeah, in terms of when I'm taking profits, for those that are interested, I will be looking to take profits in 2025, and I'll probably be taking profits at various times in the year. So whether I take profits in the first quarter, not sure if I do it will be at the very end of that, but probably more so from the second quarter onwards. I might roughly sort of DCA out of some of those coins that I've got liquid, but I will nonetheless still retain some of the supply in at least those projects that I have that sort of longer term belief in, so that I've got still some position going, still getting some staking rewards across various coins. I'll still have some cryptos that'll be locked up for the long term. And then I'll need to think about, well, next crypto cycle, is there likely to still be the upside that I want to continue investing in crypto, or do I want to do other things? So that's just me talking aloud in terms of stream of consciousness type thing. But yeah, that's how I'm seeing crypto, and I'm looking at it ultimately as a market where, if I'm to compare it to, say, property or stocks, I just think given the specific timing of where things are, I think crypto over the next 12 to 18 months will outperform as an asset class, particularly given how underpriced a lot of things are compared to certainly prices at peak. Whether you're looking at an ICP or Hex being roughly, say, that 98% down, or the likes of Pulse Chain and Pulse X being down from their sacrifice rates by still quite a substantial amount, I do believe there is still quite substantial upside. But for those that don't know much about crypto, look, you can always put into your Bitcoin and Ethereum, and you can have those sort of few dollars here and there on centralized exchanges. But for me, personally, at least, I'm all about DeFi and looking for a greater level of upside, because ultimately that interests me a little bit more. But for those that certainly have the larger positions and really want to preserve their funds more, well, I can understand and still advocate for just general, whether it's DCAing or buying at this stage into your sort of Bitcoins and Ethereums, and just having those sort of mild diversification type positions. So... but again, none of this is financial advice. Do your own research. And again, if any of the cryptos I've spoken about today interest you, do a bit more research. If you've got any questions, let me know in the comment section below, and I can provide resources as to where you can find out more about any of them. Because ultimately, these are the projects that I'll be marrying myself to over the next sort of 12, 18 months, even going way into the future out as well, with some of the long-term stakes I'll do. So yeah, let's see what happens. And yeah, I wish you the maddest of gains. All the best. See you next time.